Shri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Radha Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Navadvip Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Guru Dwarka Dham ki jai, Swami Bhakti ki jai. All glories to the all glories to the. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Jai. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sapatantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Suyuta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitam Scha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gaurati Sen Namaha Ajanunam Litabujo Kanakavadhatu Sankirtanaiga Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishambaro Dijabaro Yugadharma Palu Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataru Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatayine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhirayet. Nasdabriyeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki Grandharaja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai Shri Shrimati Gaura Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. So today we start on chapter 7, which is the third chapter in the unit 9 of study of Bhakti Vaibhava under the auspices of Bhaktivedanta Academy. So we're beginning of the chapter, further inquiries by Vidura, chapter 7, third canto. Hare Krishna. Sri Sukha Uvacha Evam Brahmanam Maitreyam Dvaipayana Sutta Buddha Trinayan Iva Bharatya Vidhura Pratyavashatha. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, O King, while Maitreya, the great sage, was speaking, Vidhura, the learned son of Dvaipanya Vyas, expressed a request in a pleasing manner by asking this question. So this is again Maitreya Vidura Samvad, been going on for third chapter now. And Vidura is now asking the following question. Brahman katham bhagavatas chinmatraya ki vikarina lilaya chapi yujyenam nirgunasya gunaha kriya. Sri Vidura said, O great Brahmanas, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected? Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected with the material modes of nature and their activities? If this is his pastime, how do the activities of the unchangeable take place and exhibit qualities without the modes of nature? Okay, Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. So this question, it's a question that Srila Prabhupada addresses each and every time. Every time Srila Prabhupada is speaking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's always saying that he's not in any way connected with the modes of material nature and is not influenced by the activities of the modes of nature. So Vidura is making a point asking this question. Shalika Prabhu, I think because we have the background at the back, it's making your figure looks like very strange and ghostly.
I think that's not the problem. I think it's something else. I'm trying to sort it out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I'm coughing and holding.
So how is it connected with the material modes of nature and the activities? So every time Srila Prabhupada talks about this, he says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead in any of his incarnations never get ever affected by the free modes of material nature. And that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unchangeable, which means that he can take different forms, but these forms are his own manifestation of in his own internal potency, right? But they are not changed because the nature of the material modes of nature, the very quality of the material modes of nature is changing everything. But however, they're competing with each other, the modes, and then changing everything. But however, they cannot change this complete spiritual whole, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if this is his pastimes, which means that the Supreme Lord appearing in this creation in different incarnations is his pastimes, then in what manner do the activities of this Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchangeable, right? How does it take place and exhibit qualities without the modes of nature? Why? Because the free qualities of the modes of nature, the gunas, the Rajogun, Tamogun, Sattvagun, they exhibit different qualities in this material world. Right? Certain animals exhibit or have mainly influenced by the modes of ignorance, some passion. Human beings are influenced by the mode of passion, and then in varieties of different modes depending on their spiritual consciousness or the involvement with fruitive activities. So in one sense, he's asking this question: how is the Supreme Person, the spiritual personality of Godhead, how is he able to manifest these different varieties of activities which are seen in this material world, but without the modes of nature? Very interesting question. So as described in the previous chapter, the difference between the Super Soul and the Supreme Lord, that the activities of the Lord is creating the cosmic manifestation performed by the Lords through the agency of his multifarious energies. But this manifestation is bewildering to the living entities. Most people, they think that the Lord pastimes in the material world is actually born out of saguna, or material activities, material qualities. But the Lord is always nirguna. Nirguna doesn't mean he has no quality. He has no material quality. That's what nirguna means. So the word is used in this nirgunasya, one who is without the modes of nature. Okay, so when the Lord descends, he is never subjected to Maya like any ordinary living being. So this is generally the question that's being asked here. So the Lord is also described as Chinmatra. Chinmatra means he's completely spiritual. He's completely
Hare Krishna. I think Prabhu's network got frozen, so he will come back soon.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, welcome back.
Hare Krishna.
We have a Japa. We have Japa. Okay, it's okay.
All right, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Sorry, I think I made a mistake here. Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay, I'm on the right verse. I'm on the text 3, of course. So let's carry on to, it says, Kridayam udhayo ribhasya kamas chikri disanyatha satas triptasya nakatayam nivritasya sadanyata. Boys are enthusiastic to play. So Kridayam, or with various diversions, because they are encouraged by desire. So because of desire, they are encouraged to play with other boys. So the first line is Kridayam udayo rivasya. You cannot sort this out, Salika? It's flashing and it's very disturbing.
I think my camera is having some challenge today. Maybe something is seemingly wrong.
You
I
can
don't
just
know.
make me host and go into a simple medium media. So boys are enthusiastic
Let
to
me
play
see.
with other boys for various diversions because they're encouraged by desire. But there's no possibility of such desire for the Lord because he's self-satisfied. So the thing is, the children, they have a desire. So Prabhupada is giving Vyasa is giving a very simple example in his writings that pushed by desire, children play because they want to enjoy something. But is there a desire for the Lord? Just like children are pushed to play. I mean, you may recall, if you have your friends playing in the schoolyard or even playing outside in the evening after school, and you are held at home, you try to do all kinds of trickery to go and play because you have this intent, I want to meet with my friends. I want to go with my friends. And you do all kinds of tricky things to be able to get out of the house, tell all kinds of stories to your mom and dad, and then so that you can go and play because that intense desire to play, right? But is the Lord similarly has this intense desire to go and engage in lila, in pastimes in the material creation? Because if a child is perfectly happy and he's engaged in something that is fulfilling, he will consider playing with their friends or not so important. Right? So is there any possibility of such a desire within the Lord? No, because he is self-satisfied and detached from everything at all times. So what pushes him? What pushes him to come to this kind of desire to actually engage? So it's a very essential question. Okay, very essential question here. Do you follow the reasoning? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to text 4. Ashrakshit Bhagavan Vishwam Gunamayat Mamayaya Taya Samsthapayatyetad Bhuya Pitya Pitastyati. By his self-sheltered potency of the free modes of nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By his self-centered potency of the free modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, which means the Maya Shakti, by her he maintains the creation, by his yoga potency, says, by her he maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. By his guna Maya, which is the Lord's energy. Spiritual or material, it is the Lord's energy. So we know that everything here in this world is going on by the effect of the modes of material nature. So the Lord has caused this creation of this universe. When we studied that in the pradhana, everything is in equilibrium. The Lord injects the jivas and injects the time factor. Then everything also, by the influence of the time factor, becomes agitated. With the agitation of the modes of nature, the competition of the different modes of nature is generated. First, pradhana transforms into mahatattva, which is the same, avyakta, pradhana, sum total of material energy, mahatattva. It is exactly the same thing, sometimes called prakriti. But then when it goes into action, it's called mahatattva. Then mahatattva is mostly in sattva. And a portion of that mahatattva gets embedded in our system, which is a chitta. But this variation of the modes of nature mixed with the mahatattva generates ahankar. Ahankar in mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. We've studied that. I'm just repeating it. So ahankar in the mode of goodness generates the mind. Ahankar in the mode of passion generates intelligence and the sense devatas. And ahankar in the mode of ignorance generates the panchamahabhuta, the senses and the sense objects. Okay, the sense objects and the object of senses. Okay, so then, yeah, this is how the material energy is sheltered in the Supreme Lord, and by the effect of his glances, she becomes activated or energized or in a mode of production or gestation. All right. So this material, I'll read the last part. This material world is not for the purpose of the Lord himself, but it is for the condition. Let me read the whole purport. It's a very sweet purport, but I'm saying everything that's in their purport, so I don't have to talk a lot. This cosmic universe is created by the Lord for those living entities who are carried away by the illusory thought of becoming one with him by imitation. Why is it saying by imitation? Because we want to enjoy like the Lord. Not just enjoy, we want to lord it over. We want to be controller. The modes of nature are the further bewilderment of the conditioned souls. The modes of nature are very powerful. They are energized to work under the care of the Supreme Lord. right? But seems sometimes like they work independently. That's why in the previous verse, the word self-centered is used. But actually they work under the direction of the Supreme Lord. So that is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So the conditioned living entity, bewildered by the illusory energy, considers himself a part of the material creation. So this, how does a living entity identify? We've discussed that. I think you must have discussed that in the second canto. How does the living entity identify with material nature when it is spiritual in nature? You remember that? It is only by misidentification. It identifies with the body because of what? These are basic things that must have already been in your system of knowledge of Bhagavatam. Because of what does the living entity identify with the modes of nature? I'm not going to move forward till I get an answer. So be ready to wait for half an hour.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Madhavan Prabhu, go ahead.
Okay, he said I should go ahead. I think the reason is obvious.
I'm glad I'm not there. Otherwise, I'll be using it to my students. Avidya.
Yeah, okay.
Lord Brahma creates avidya. He was unable to manifest things, everything properly, and he creates avidya. We've discussed this. You must have discussed this in the beginning. But then there's more depth understanding of the Lord Brahma creating avidya a bit later in the third canto. So you will see that also. But there's some explanation have already been given in the second canto. Okay? So he creates avidya. Also, we will discuss that in the 12th chapter. Okay? But he creates avidya. Without avidya, he creates the avidya. Why he creates avidya? Very interesting point. A lot of things will coalesce together if we discuss this on this point. So Lord Brahma is intelligence. He's an embodiment of Vedic knowledge. So if he blocks knowledge, there's avidya. So the person who is able to be the embodiment of knowledge, he can also, shield you and me from that vidya, from that knowledge. So he creates avidya. And different categories of vidya he creates. So by creation of avidya, the jiva is thought to misidentify. Because the idea that I am spirit soul, I am Brahman, is an inherent quality of the soul. So he has to create avidya for the soul to misidentify. So he does create that avidya. So at that point, then what are the attributes in the soul that therefore propels it into material creation? It is only its desire. So that's why in this text free, Krishna Vyasadeva very intelligently used the desire of, give an explanation of how desire will push a child out of the home to go and play with his friends. So the desire of the jivas also does that, but the Lord has no such desire. So why does he come and play in this material energy? Now you understand? The Lord has no such desire. Pushed under the homes. So why does he come? Interesting. Why does he come? To play. So the material world is not for the purpose of the Lord himself, but for the conditioned souls who wanted to be controllers due to the misuse of the God-gifted minute independence. All they had, which was part of their natural constitution, just as a Lord, to have that independence, because the Lord is independent. He is Swarat, fully independent. So the jivas being his amsa, they have a small independence. But the jiva, he uses his minute independence and want to become a little controller, because the Lord is a supreme controller. Because the Lord has desire, so he has desire. So thus the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. But the minute independence, one, it is manifested independently to the senses and to the service of the Lord. They create repeated birth and death. So very deep philosophy here. So text 5. De sata kalato yosa avasthata satonyata avilupta vadobadhatma sayujeta chaya katham. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situations, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? There it is. Right? So he said, time factor does not, he says here, kalata, circumstances. First is circumstantial, desata. So there's range of circumstances. It could be time, it could be situations, it could be that we go to sleep, or it could be to some other cause. The consciousness is never separated from the jiva. But how does he become engaged in nescience? How does he become engaged in nescience? Okay? So let us read this carefully. I wish someone who has a good mic and clear can read for me. Yadunath Prabhu, can you read? Okay. Whoever.
Okay.
But it has to be very clear.
Hare Krishna.
Go on.
Read. Okay. The consciousness of the living entity, living being, is always present and never change under any circumstances. As above mentioned, when the living man moves from one place to other, he is conscious that he has changed his position. He is always present in the past, present, and future, like electricity. One can remember incident from past and can conjecture about his future also on the basis of past experience. He never forgets his personal identity, even though he is praised in awakening rare identity. Awakening consciousness, how can the living entity not forgetful of his rare identity as pure spirit? So identify with matter unless influences by something beyond self. Conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the Avya tendency, confirmed in both the Vishnu Purana and beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. The living entity is mentioned in Bhagavata 7.5. Parapti, any in the Vishnu Purana, he is mentioned as the Parashakti. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord as potency, not as the potent. The potent can beat many potencies, but the potency cannot equal potent at any stage. One potency may be overcome by another potency, but to the potent, all potents are under control. The potency or the Shistriyajna acti of the Lord has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency. Avida kama shamjina, and in this way he is in the awakening consciousness, awakening substances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful of his real entity unless influenced by the avidya potent, because the living entity is prone to the influence of the avidya potent. He
Hare
can
Krishna.
never equal supreme potency. Hare Krishna.
So you can all understand that the living entity, the jiva. So my simple question would be to all of you: Does a jiva atma, the spirit soul, changes at some time? No, it doesn't change at any time. It misidentifies and then is brought down and he is covered. So because of the covering of avidya, the jivatma, which is called the Kshetrajna Shakti of the Lord, or the Jivatma Shakti, or the Jiva Shakti, it is not as potent even. It is higher in nature. So that's the verse that Prabhupada quotes in 7.5 in Bhagavad Gita. The living entity is the same nature as the Supreme Lord, but he's slightly different in the sense that it is the Tashta Shakti, marginal potency, and this is explained in 7.5. Aparayam itastu anyam prakritim vidhi me param. Prakritim vidhi me param. Right? He's my superior energy. What? Jiva bhutam mahabhaho. The jiva is my superior energy, superior than Maya. In terms of quality. But because it is very small, it can be covered by the all-encompassing modes of material nature, which is a prakriti. So, aparayam itastu anyam prakritim vidime param, which is 7.5. Right? Beside this, he says, Almighty Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind. Now, wait a second. If any one of you can remember the 7.4, what is the 7.4? Come on, Bhakti Shastri. Right. Carry on. So what does Krishna describe in the 7.4? Bhumir, Apo, Nalo, Vayo, Kham. 5 gross elements. Mind, intelligence, false ego. 3 subtle elements. What are these mind, intelligence, false ego? Are they what? They are material energies. Do you follow me? And what are the other 5? Also material energy. Material elements, sorry. Material elements. So he says, Bhumi, Rapo, Nalo, Vayo, Kham, Mano, Buddhi, Hankar. Itiyam me bhinna prakriti ashtada. My 8 separated material energies. And then he follows with this verse. But there is a superior energy of mind. Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho. Almighty armed Arjuna, my superior energy called the Jiva Bhuta, which is comprising of the living entities. And what are they doing? They are exploiting the material, this material inferior nature. They are trying to exploit this inferior material nature of mind. Because of the idea that they are superior, they actually want to enjoy. But they cannot enjoy separate from Krishna, except we feed upon, so to speak, something that is inferior to them. So they try to enjoy the material energy. This is the explanation of Srila Prabhupada. So therefore, but when they try to enjoy the material energy, they get covered. So they get really covered because the material energy is very powerful. So inferior, yes, in quality, but more powerful. So text 6. The Lord as a super soul is situated in everyone's heart. Why then do the living entity activities result in misfortune and misery? Bhagavan eka eva isha sarva kshetreshu avasthita. He is situated in all the living entities within their field of activity, kshetreshu. Amusya durga Durbhagatvam klesho vakamadibi. Kutaha. Why then? Kutaha. Why then do the living entities activities result in misfortune? Kleshova. In misfortune and misery. This is a very interesting question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya Rishi. Why are the living entities subjected to many miseries and misfortune, in spite of them being situated in the Kshetrajna Shakti as Jiva Shakti? Next to them also, they have another knower of their field of activity, which is Paramatma next to them. Right? Why is that? So the body is considered a fruitful tree, and the living entity and the Lord, they are like two birds seated on the tree. The individual soul is trying to eat the fruit of the tree, and the super soul, Paramatma, Antaryami, the immanent self, the super self, the supreme Lord, Paramatma, is sitting there and is witnessing that bird trying to enjoy. But here the Lord is a protector. He is the father of the living entity. He is a maintainer of that living entity. Right? So let's read the middle part. I said, a citizen or the state may be in misery for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority. But how can it be possible that a citizen suffers from other citizens while the chief of the state is personally present? From another point of view, it is understood that the Jiva is qualitative one with the Lord, and this knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nations, especially in presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does a living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? How? The Lord is a father and protector of the living entity. So even then that the Paramatma is present next to the living entity, why does it become covered? Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings, be covered? It should not be so, but actually we see that it happens everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura to get the solution. Okay, so this is a question here. These are a set of questions, set of inquiries of Vidura about Ishvara and Jiva and their relationship thereof. And these questions go on up to text 7, okay, which is here. So he inquires about the jiva. First, he inquires in text 5. Please note this down. How does a pure soul become engaged in nations? Text 5. Then in text 6, how does a living entity, in spite of the Lord's presence in the heart, suffer? Which is text 6. Now 7. He says, now in 7, Vidura is asking, O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of the nations. And I therefore request you to clear it up. So he said, I am illusion. I'm not able to understand. So clear this up for me. How is the jiva, who is a pure soul, engaged in nations, and why does it experience suffering? So then Maitreya Rishi answers, but his answer is actually been related by Shukadeva Goswami. So Shukadeva Goswami is giving the answer here. And Shukadeva Goswami is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj. And he said, O king, so this is Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit as from text 8. So these misconceptions, these erroneous ideas about the jiva and the soul, the jiva and the Supreme Lord, Ishvara, or the Super Soul, in that case, these are the inquiries of Vidura between the verses 1 to 7. Now Maitreya is going to try to clear up these misconceptions in the mind of Vidura, which he will do in the next 7 verses, 8 till 14. So let us read what Shuka is saying to Parikshit Maharaj. Sri Sukha uvacha Saitam chodita shatra tattva jigyasuna muni pratyaha bhagavat chitta smayang iva gatasmaya. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first he was astonished, but then he replied to him without hesitation. Why? Because he was fully God conscious, so he had full knowledge here. So since the great sage Maitreya was filled with God consciousness, he had no reason to be astonished at such contradictory questions by Vidura. Therefore, although as a devotee he externally expressed surprise, as if he did not know how to reply to those questions, he immediately became perfectly settled and properly replied to Vidura. Yashmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. Anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, and devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. What does know everything by the grace of the Lord means? It seems like a contradictory statement, this line. Anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, right? And devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. So does the devotee know everything, or does he know something? We should ask a question to Chitra Prabhu because he's back on the screen.
A pure devotee of the Lord knows everything by the grace of the Lord, because of his faith in the Lord. The Lord reveals everything to him.
But the statement is everyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, and devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. So he knows to some extent or everything.
Because he's part and parcel, he knows something. He has some knowledge. Every Jiva Atman has some knowledge, level of knowledge. But because he is minute, his answer part. He does not know everything.
But why
But
does it
by
say,
the
why
influence
does
of
it say
Bhakti,
here? Why does it say Lord makes him able to know everything?
Yeah.
because
Prabhu.
of his devotion to the Lord.
So
Yeah.
why does in the first part he says anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent?
Yeah, because there is a difference between a devotee and a pure devotee. Because ultimately everybody is a devotee of the Lord. But there are classes or categories.
Are you satisfied with your answer yourself?
Yeah, because everyone is a devotee of the Lord, but there are categories of devotees.
Okay, Chitra Prabhu, give Mark Salika out of 10. How much you give him?
2. I'll give him 8/10.
Okay, so what is that two
Very magnanimous.
It's actually, it's very, very tricky, this question. But actually, what happens is, I'm remembering some very beautiful pastime of Srila Prabhupada. Because in one sense, if you know Krishna, you know everything. Krishna says, once you know me, there's nothing left to be known.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to the relative world and a devotee is here, right? What does he know and what doesn't he know? It is actually very simple in the sense he will know, and that's why Maitreya, he a little bit surprised and then he answers. Because the question is such that it's a little bit thoughtful question. So Maitreya seems surprised and then he answers. Why? Because the Lord is giving him the intelligence to answer. So that's the point, is we don't know everything, but whatever needs to be known, Krishna will make us know. Now, we can never know everything, but what needs to be known, because we are devotees of Krishna, Krishna will make us understand and know. Remember once they asked Prabhupada, how do you know what to do? Prabhupada said, Krishna tells me. And he said, and then devotee asks again, no, I mean, how do you know what to do? So Krishna tells me. So it is like Maitreya hesitated for a minute. Prabhupada is writing his own heart. Listen to it carefully. Prabhupada is writing his own ecstasy, his own heart in this very interesting point. If you really put yourself in, we can never put ourselves in Prabhupada's, sort of angle. I could not use any other word apart from that. So anyone who is a devotee of the Lord knows about the Lord to some extent, and devotional service to the Lord makes him able to know everything by the grace of the Lord. So you see, Srila Prabhupada is like that, just like Maitreya Rishi. Ask him a very tricky question, and he will answer it by the grace of the Lord. Now you understand it, Prabhu?
Yeah, actually, I'm remembering my answer is generated from, I think I understand you. Maybe probably I didn't present it properly. There was a pastime here of Gurudev and devotees some years back. So some devotee broke principle. And the matter was brought before the spiritual master. So like Gurudev was sitting down, he was asking everyone. So some devotees say that, but Guru is supposed to know everything. Because his Guru is a pure devotee. So he answered. He said, yes, a devotee of the Lord knows everything, but the Lord, he only sees what Krishna wants him to see. If Krishna doesn't want him to see your nonsense, Krishna doesn't have to be showing your nonsense to his pure devotees. So Krishna only reveals to his pure devotees what he wants him to know about you.
Yes, this is exactly what this is. It's not a contradictory statement, but it has to be understood deeply. Very nice. So, okay, we'll upgrade you to 9/10 now. So although a devotee may apparently express himself. Yes, Prabhu. Rasavan.
Yes. In addition, can we also express the Tesham Ivanu Kapatan verse?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever ignorance is there. Yes, it's a very, very good point. Tesam Ivanu Kampartam verse means that whatever little bit of ignorance is there, he will remove it. But that is more in relationship to one is practicing devotional service.
Okay.
And if some ignorance are left, which hampers his progress towards the lotus feet of Krishna, because you have to see it in the context of Chatushloki Gita, the text 10:8, 10:9, 10:10, and then 10:11, which is a Teshamivan Bhartam verse. If you see it, these 4 verses, which are the nutshell Gita, you can see that it starts with knowing Krishna, other source of everything, then worshipping him, then enjoying talking about him, which is practice of bhajana kriya, and finally attaining his lotus feet by his mercy, clearing all the the influence of the modes of nature through anartha nivritti and everything. But then if there's something left at the end, then he clears it up, right? So there you can also say, because like you're saying, then with the torchlight of knowledge, who becomes known? Krishna becomes known. And the ignorance is removed. So yeah, it's good to tie it up like that. It's nice, Prabhuji. Text 9. So Maitreya is answering. Yes.
Sorry, Prabhu. Please, just a simple question. What happens when we get to the Vyasashan and we chant the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya? What happens at that moment? Because that moment you have to give knowledge and questions will come. You have to answer those questions.
I don't understand your language. Someone has to repeat the question. Salika, explain to me the question.
Yeah, I didn't get him quite well also, but he's talking about when we chant Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya, but I didn't get the other part of what he's
Well, the first part of my question is what happens when we are on the Vyasashan? When we have to give class, then, we have to chant the Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are taking shelter of yesterday. So, and that situation, we are no more ourselves, we are representing the Param. And when they throw questions, I think Krishna takes control.
Repeat the question.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Prabhu's accent is very difficult for me. Yeah.
Okay. He's saying that when we sit on the Vyasasan to preach, we're trying to represent Srila Vyasadeva by offering our respect to Srila Vyasadeva. We chant Om Namo Bhagavati Vasudevaya. At that time, because we are representing, we're supposed to be able to know everything.
No. No, because it depends on the level of our purity. It doesn't happen instantly. It is not the Pentecostal church, you just get the magic and then you change. So it is according to our level of understanding, our level of surrender, we get rewarded by knowing Krishna as and how proportionately we surrender to him. But yeah, we get special mercy sometimes. I think I know where you're coming from also. It's like sometimes when you're giving class, then you get questions when you ever realize how you answer these questions. But then when you look back, you said you answered the questions, right? Is that where you're coming from? Yes. Okay. Yes. So, yes, that is a mercy of Krishna. Krishna empowers us so that because we are acting on his behalf, we're acting on his behalf, on the behalf of the Guru Parampara. Guru Parampara protects us so we don't become a fool. So, just to protect the authority of the Vyasasan and the Parampara, Krishna empowers us to answer questions that we never thought we would be able to deal with, and people come out satisfied hearing you. And then when you listen to your own class, you think, oh, how did I do that? Right? Happens to us all the time. Thank you,
Prabhu.
Yes, thank you. So, okay, so Maitreya Uvacha, which is now text 9. Okay, so let us read this text. Maitreya Uvacha, Seyam Bhagavato Maya Yannayena Virudhyate Ishwarasya Vimuktasya Karpanyam Utabandhanam. Sri Maitreya is saying here, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is overcome by illusion of Maya. And at the same time, they maintain that he is unconditioned. This is against all logic. So we see that in Shastra, understanding scripture, Nyaya, logic, is very important. It's very important. So here, Maitreya Muni is saying that some people say this, but this is a contradiction. Because remember, the first question was, how does the Lord come into this material energy? Is he propelled by some desire? Is he influenced by the modes of nature? Seems like he's acting like everyone else, right? So Maitreya is answering this question here to clear this misconception about the Ishvara and the Jiva. And let us see what he says. So this is a contradiction in all sorts, because if someone says that the Supreme Lord is overcome by this Maya, which is illusory, modes of material nature, but at the same time that they say that the Supreme Lord is never conditioned. So he wants to clear up this thing. So this is against all logic. So let us see what he explains. So we know what it is in the purport. It's a long purport, but it's a very simple message in the purport, that actually the Lord is never covered. So the living entity is covered, but the Supreme Lord is never covered. So we read the next verse, okay, and then we will go back to the purport in a minute. So yad arthena vinamusya pumsam atma viparyaya pratiyata upadrushta swasirsha chedanatiko. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background, like a man who dreams and he sees his head cut off. So this is also a very tricky paradigm to understand. So the problem is Atma Viparyaya. The distress of the living entity is actually caused by misidentification. Right? So, for example, you can dream that I see my head cut off. But if your head is cut off, how can you see that your head is cut off? Because your head can never be cut off. What is cut off is because the jiva is misidentifying with the body, and he's thinking, my head is cut off. No, but the body is. So how can you see that? You know, the body is cut off, or the body is damaged, or the body has suffered something, but the jiva is misidentifying. And he's saying, I dreamt that my head was cut off. But what was cut off is there was an impression on your, due to your misidentification of the body. So it's another powerful example. It's another powerful example. So here, this problem of Atma Pariyaya, that is the misidentification of the living entity, is being addressed in this verse. Because this idea has no factual background. Because like a man who is dreaming like his head is cut off, or a man is dreaming that a tiger is eating him off. And then he wakes up and he looks at it, but, oh, I'm okay. Okay, all parts of my limb are still intact, but I was thinking, so why? Because he is So why does Shukadeva Goswami speaks like this here? Because now you can get the idea. Because when you're in the dream state, the subconscious is working. You're not conscious of yourself or your body, but the Atma is conscious of itself, and the Atma is also conscious of the body that it is within. And there's a misidentification of something that's happening to the body. So therefore, in the dream state, these things that happens give, why this explanation from the dream state? Because from that state, we come to understand that actually we misidentify with the body. When we are in the wakeful state, we don't so often think. Because this is just an example to make us think that we misidentify with the body. Do you get what I'm explaining? Prabhupada gives this example over and over
daydreaming
again.
And night dreaming.
Night dreaming, say night dreaming, in a dream state when you're asleep. Swapna. Okay, so we carry on. In the previous text, what is explained is just a basic thing again. Prabhupada is talking about the living entities, right? Being covered, the pure consciousness of the living entity is covered by avidya, which we have already discussed. Okay? So we have also discussed another point that is explained in the purport, which is the living entity is overpowered by the material energy, because the material energy is very, very powerful. Even though the living entity is of higher, superior nature, okay, and that the living entity is always eternal and it stays in this manner all the time. Okay, so you can read this. We have to go to the next. We'll read this purport on this one here in the text 10. A teacher in school once threatened his pupil that he would cut off the pupil's head and hang it on the wall so that the child could see how his head has been cut off. Right? Now let's see. The child became frightened and stopped his mischief. Because he's misidentifying and he's thinking that I will see my head cut off here. So he will not be able to see his head cut off because he'll be cut off. But he imagined it because he misidentified himself with his head being cut off. So he stopped his mischief, right? So for example, if you have been dreaming on a regular basis that you will be drowned, when you go to a river, you will be careful. Now you be careful. So, because you're misidentifying with what is not real. Similarly, the miseries of the pure soul and the disruption of this self-identification are managed by the external energy of the Lord. So the miseries of the pure soul is superfluous to the miseries of the super soul are superfluous to the soul. Anarthopashamam sakshat bhakti yogam adokshache. Vidwang sajanato vidwang janato vidwang chakre shamita sammitam. You know that verse? I forgot the last part. Wait a minute. Just wait. I'll find the verse. Anarthopashamam sakshat bhakti yogam adokshache. Oh, this verse, 176. The material miseries of the living entity which are superfluous to him. So this verse, Anarthapasamam Shakshat Bhakti Yogam Madokshaje. Okay. Lokasya Januta Vidwang Chakre Sattata Shamitam. The material miseries of the living entity which are superfluous to him can be mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. The general people do not know this, but therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature which is in relation to the Supreme Truth. So this is after Lord Vyasadeva entered into Samadhi to see the Supreme Lord. He could see this clearly, that the material nature, right, is making the suffering of the living entities, but that the living entities don't know this, that the misery is superfluous to him. Anarthopashamam shakshat. But that this material misery can be mitigated by the linking process, bhakti yoga madhukshache. But the mass of people, lokasya ajanatu, you see this ajanatu. Lokasya means the general people. Lokasya ajanatu vidwans. This is, they don't know this. Right? So therefore, the learned Vyasadeva, Chakre, Satvata Samhitam, the learned Vyasadeva, he composed this Srimad Bhagavatam for this purpose. So this is a verse that you should all know by heart anyway. So the same thing is here in our discussion. Actually, there is no bondage or misery for the living entity, nor does he ever lose his pure knowledge. In his pure consciousness, when he thinks a little seriously about his position, he can understand that he is eternally subordinate to the mercy of the Supreme. So this misery doesn't touch the jiva, the soul. It is anartha pashamam shakshat. Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, my camera, I think it will continue to do like this until I restart the system. My question is a little bit deep, a little bit far off from what we're discussing, but I'm just meditating on the discussions, explanation of the superfluous nature of the living entities, understanding of himself. And I'm wondering, could we say the living entities finding himself in the position of a Nitya Bada is part of the Lord's opulence? There are Nitya Siddha Nitya Badas. The Nitya Badas, the living entities who are conditioned, eternally conditioned, or find themselves in this material world. Could we say their position is part of the manifestation of the opulence of the Lord?
I don't know. I don't see the connection, how to answer the question. So, let us carry on with this discussion. So in his pure consciousness, when he thinks a little seriously about his position, he can understand that he is eternally subordinate to the mercy of the Supreme, and that his attempt to become one with the Supreme Lord is a false illusion. Life after life, the living entity falsely tries to lord it over material nature and become the lord of the material world, but there is no tangible result. At last, when frustrated, he gives up material activities and tries to become one with the Lord and speculate with word chagruri. This is called mental speculation. And without success, becomes he gets fed up with material activities, so he takes to the process of peace, which is jnana. Try to negate his material existence completely from this material platform and be situated on Brahman. So that is those who are impersonalists to do that. So the activities are performed under the dictation of the illusory energy. We know that Prakrite Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvasa, chapter 3, text 27 of the Gita. The experience is compared to experiencing one's head having cut off in a dream. The man whose head has been cut off also sees that his head has been cut off. If a person's head is severed, he loses power to see. But how can he see? Because he's misidentifying with the body. Therefore, if a man sees his head is cut off, it means that he thinks like that in hallucination. Similarly, so the idea of the head being cut off is because the eyes to see is on the head. So if you see that your head is being cut off, that's an hallucination, that's an illusion. Because if your head is being cut off, you have the eyes on the head, how can you see? Therefore, if a man sees that his head had been cut off, it means that he thinks that he's in hallucination. Similarly, living entity is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord, and he has his knowledge with him. That knowledge that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord is part of his knowledge. And he has this knowledge with him, but artificially he thinks that he is God himself. And that also he is God, he has lost his knowledge due to Maya. This is generally, the Mayavadis think like that. This conception has no meaning. Okay, this is a process by which knowledge is covered. And because this artificial rebellious condition of the living entity gives him all troubles, it is to be understood that he should take to his normal life as a devotee of the Lord and be relieved from the misconception. So again, anarthopashamam shakshat bhakti yogam madhokshache lokasya janata vidwangs chakre satta samitam. By the linking process of devotional service, he can recover his lost relationship with the Supreme Lord. Okay, so text 11. As the moon reflected on water appears to be to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the water, quality of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. Okay. So when you see the moon is reflected on water, and when the water is trembling, you will say the moon is trembling. But the moon is fixed, the water is trembling. So when you see yourself, which is fixed, yourself is fixed, when associated with water, just like the moon associated with water through its reflection in the water is trembling, then you see the moon is trembling. So similarly, when you see yourself associated with matter, and matter is changing, matter, which is your body, is cut off, then you think, oh, I'm being cut off, my head is being cut off. So this is what it is said to the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter and trembling. Do you follow this? Yeah. So the moon is fixed, but it is seen in a pot of water, the reflection, and the water is trembling. So you think that the moon is trembling, but the moon is not trembling. But because it is associated with the water through its reflection, you think it is trembling. It is not trembling. So the soul is associated in his consciousness with this matter. So therefore, every change in the matter is an identification of, I am feeling like this, I am changing, I am doing this. So it's a very simple example, right? The Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, is compared to the moon in the sky, and the living entities are compared to the reflection of the moon on water. The moon in the sky is fixed and does not appear to quiver like the moon on the water. Actually, like the original moon in the sky, the moon reflected on the water should also not quiver, but because of being associated with water, the reflection appears to be quivering. Although in actual fact, the moon is fixed. The water moves, but the moon does not move. Similarly, the living entities appear to be tainted by material qualities like illusion, lamentation, and miseries. Although in the pure soul, such qualities are not there. The word pratiyate, which means apparently and not actually, like the experience of one's head being cut off in a dream. The reflection of the moon on the water is a separate rays of the moon and not actual moon. Right? So the separate parts and parcel of the Lord entangled in the water material existence have the quivering quality, whereas the Lord is like the actual moon in the sky, which is not at all touched with water. So the light of the sun and the moon reflected on water. So what is reflected is the light of the sun and the moon, not the moon that is reflected. It's the light from the moon, the light from the sun is reflected in the water. So the reflection of the sun or the moon is accepted as a real sun or moon by less intelligent men, and the pure monistic philosopher develops from these ideas. In fact, the light of the sun and the moon are actually different from the sun and moon themselves, although they are actually connected. The light of the moon is spread throughout the sky, appears to be impersonal, but the moon planet as it is personal, and the living entities on the moon planet also personal. So in the rays of the moon, different material entities appear to be comparatively more or less important. The light of the moon on the Taj Mahal appears to be more beautiful than the same light in the wilderness. Anyway, we can leave that bit here, but you can understand this, that the light from the moon is reflected. So just think on this a little bit, but just take it under the general, general topic here, which is being discussed, is what is the problem with the jivas and why does it misidentify? Why does it come into contact with the material energy because of misidentification? He really isn't fully in contact, but he's misidentifying. He just covered. So text 12. But the misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva, through the process of devotional service to the Lord in a mode of detachment. So the Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena Tirodate. So this, just like the verse 1:7, same thing almost. Okay, this misidentification can be diminished by the linking process of devotional service. Okay, so when we come to the platform of purely understanding our spiritual identity, we will be able to see ourselves clearly. And this misidentification is a chitta, the material consciousness that is polluted, where we see ourselves within the material energy. Okay, so let's go to 13. When the senses are identified, are satisfied in the seer, super soul, the personality of Godhead, and merge in him, all miseries are completely vanquished as after a sound sleep. So they are here saying that when the senses are satisfied, so when the senses have a relationship with the seer, with the super soul, and actually we are in his service, then the miseries are not there. Right? So the misidentification is cleared by development of bhakti, by development of our relationship. So why is this quivering of the living entities described like that? Because of the influence of the soul. Because it is the wrong perception. We're perceiving happiness and distress by the effect of the senses. So all our perception is coming from the senses, which is situated on the body. And because Prabhupada is saying, since the material existence is meant for sense gratification, the senses are the medium for material activities. And therefore, when we see everything through the senses, which are meant for material activities, then everything that is unsteady, changing, happiness, distress, gain, loss, and everything is seen through this perception. And in that respect, you can refer to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 14, Matras Pashastu Kantaya Shitoshta Sukha Dukada Gamma Pani Nityastam Titikshava Bharata. The appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress is like the appearance and disappearance of summer and winter seasons, and they're born out of sense perception. Okay, so please read through the essential lessons in this chapter has already been given here. Okay, so we will go to text 14. Because I'm sorry to put it this way, it requires a little bit more careful reflection and meditate on this, see ourselves for who we are, why we are identifying with this material nature, why are we identifying with the body, why aren't we able to get out of the conception of the body? I'm not the body. Why? Because we are engaged with our senses for ourselves. But when we engage in our senses for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, which is called the linking process in devotional service, then we become clear or clarified in our consciousness that I am spirit soul, I am not. As long as I'm not the material body and I'm not the senses. As long as we utilize the senses in our own self, for our own selfish purpose, we will not see this. Some theoretical understanding can be there, but the actual realization of it will come in the linking process of devotional service. So we will not be troubled by this material attraction and so on and so forth. So the Lord is there as a seer of our activities. He's seeing, as Paramatma, he's seeing our activities. He is a witness. Right? He is a Bhokta, Bharta, Upadrushta, Anumantascha, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara, Paramatmeti Chapi Yukto. Right? He is Paramatma, he can see everything. And he's the overseer, he's the enjoyer, he's a permitter, he's present, and therefore Purushosattvastu, he can see. But we cannot see. But by linking, we can start to understand, oh, I am spirit. So you can, like you are there on the other side, and he's there, he can see. But when you come on his side, linking, you can also see. Then you can also see. Okay? So we go to text 14. Simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Sorry, before we go to the next test 15, this test 14, I need a little bit of explanation on what Prabhupada meant when he says that the second sentence, since the entire material existence is meant for sense gratification. That sentence is a little bit confusing for me. I need some little clarification because it starts sounding as though the senses are meant to serve the master of the senses, ultimately for Krishna's pleasure. But here it is sounding though as if the material, the entire material existence is meant for sense gratification. So that sentence, I need a clarification on that. It's meant for sense.
Look at creation. Look at Sarga.
Okay.
What activates Pradhana? Just answer the question one by one. It's also a revision for everyone. What activates Pradhana? Come on.
By the sin of the Lord.
But what does the Lord inject?
Glands.
Yeah, but what does he inject with the glands?
With the glands, he injected the jivas into the material nature.
Right, the jiva. So inject the material. So look at Sarga. So with the glands, he injects the jivas. And then he time. Then when the jivas come in the pradhana, then the agitation starts. Then when the agitation starts, it becomes mahatattva, pradhana in motion. Things that are generated, everyone gets an identity, then the ahankara is generated. But immediately after the ahankara, what are generated? The material elements, the intelligence and the mind. And then from there, the sense objects. So you see the connection between the, why does Krishna has to do with any of this at this point? He's creating facility for us. He has his facilities in the spiritual world, if you looked at it in a segregated way. He doesn't need this. He doesn't need this. He's not impelled by a desire to come into this material nature to play, just like it was explained previously that the boy, the krida, the child, he's impelled by a desire to go and play. Krishna is not impelled by the desire to come into this material nature and to enjoy. We are. So therefore, he creates all these different things and he creates the senses and he said, here, have it. Take it. This is what you need, right? Okay, I give you senses, I give you sense objects, I give you mind, I give you intelligence, right? I give you everything, right? Go ahead. But he doesn't give you a full leash. Otherwise, we'll be all like animals. I mean, we are, but he gives the controllers, the sense devatas, manage this in a way, manage this world in a way that the jivas whom I have put in there, who wants to engage in material creation to enjoy, won't be able to do what they want all the time.
Okay.
So he puts the sense devatas to control.
Okay, now let's start making meaning.
But so far, if you look at it so far, what's that really has in common with the Supreme Lord in terms of enjoying? No, he's creating a facility for us. That's why that's why it is clearly explained. Why is a sarga so important? Why understanding sarga, primary creation, so important? Because then you can see, okay, when he injects the jivas, they're just like, we start to get, all ready for our, just like you throw some bait at in some pond and you have a lot of fish, everyone gets, like that, go and start eating the bait, eating the food thrown in. So it's a little bit like this, the jivas are there and then the senses are created and then the sense objects are given. And then the mind becomes the, the intelligence, get all the information from the mind and try to engage the senses into, enjoying the sense objects. That's what it is. The Lord is not so impelled or pushed as a desire to come into this field to play with us. Right? It is our world. He says, go and be your boss there if you want to be. But then at the same time, Krishna, he is very cautious with us because he cares. So then he comes in his own energy, but he tries to manifest some pastimes so that we can be attracted to him. And his pastimes are done on a segregated energy, in a separate energy by itself, which is called the Yogamaya. And then by his pastimes, we may become attracted to him. And we become attracted to hearing why he's acting like this. Who is he? What is our relationship with him? And then when we inquire all about that, then we realize, oh, goodness me, we're not meant to be doing what we're doing. Let's forget about our senses and try to engage the senses of the Lord, and then we can go back to Godhead.
Thank you.
Okay, it's clear?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhu.
Now, the interesting thing is the mercy of Krishna is his bhakti. This is the real mercy of Krishna. All the other things is also mercy of Krishna for the jivas. The yoga, the jnana, the austerities, the penance, the fruitive activity. It's also mercy of the Lord because they may come to gradual progress. But the interesting thing is bhakti has the ability to be manifest even on our senses, which are meant to be engaged with the sense objects. So bhakti can be manifest on the senses. This is a most important point to retain. If we engage our senses in the service of the Lord, bhakti will be manifest there. And that bhakti becomes a linking process to the Supreme Lord. This is the most important part to attain in this. Is through the process of bhakti, we will link up with the Lord. Even with our material senses. Even with our material senses. Bhakti can be, so the senses here have twofold meaning. The senses is for our trying to enjoy the material world, but also the senses can also be used to serve the senses of the Lord. Rishikena Rishikesa Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam Tatparitvena Nirvalam Rishikena Rishikesa Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So if we become free of all the upadhis, where upadhis means impediments or misidentification, where we are identifying with the body and senses to enjoy ourselves. But if we when we become free of this conception of our senses for our enjoyment, which are upadhis, impediments, when we become free of it, sarvapadi vinir muktam, tat paritvena nirmalam, and we become nirmala, we become pure. How? Rishikena Rishikesa Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. By engaging our senses in the service of the Lord of our senses. Rishikena Rishikesa. Rishikena, our senses, in the service of Rishikesha. Then Bhakti Ruchyate. So it has the ability, the senses, even in the contaminated state, the senses can be used in serving Krishna and they get purified by the process of serving Krishna. Right? So that's why the process of chanting, hearing, hearing Krishna Katha, hearing the holy name, chanting the holy name, taking prasadam, these are the preliminary steps of engagement of our senses to purify ourselves.
No, thank you.
Is that explains your question?
Yeah, actually, you hit the nail on the head because I was thinking about the Rishikena's verse, Nectar of Devotion, while I was asking that question. So you connected it together, so it's clear now.
Okay, any other questions so far? So text 14, simply by chanting and hearing of the transcendental name, form, etc. of the Supreme Law, personality of God, it's Krishna, one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable condition. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attraction for serving the flavor of the dust of the Lord's lotus feet. So this explains here two levels. The first level is simply by hearing and chanting, one achieve the cessation of miserable conditions. These are the first two leaves of devotional service, Klesh Agni. There's auspiciousness and there's cessation of material activities. Right? In the beginning of sadhana bhakti, these two things are manifest. There's all auspiciousness in our life, right? The first two leaves of bhakti, right? Kripa, and there's the Kleshagni, which means the cessation of material miseries. Right? That you must have heard, of course, nectar of devotion. So one can achieve the cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. Now there's another level. Therefore, what to speak of those who have attained attraction? So those who have attraction, rati, an ashakti, attachment, and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord, they're on a different level. So let us see the two different things that Prabhupada explains here. Two different methods of controlling the material senses are recommended in the Vedic scriptural wisdom. One of them is a process of jnana on the path of philosophical understanding of the Supreme Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. So we can go through the process of jnana, understand, and therefore then extricate ourselves by the process of knowledge to not being involved with the material nature. The other is that of direct engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Of these two most popular methods, the path of devotional service is recommended here as the best because one on the path of devotional service does not have to wait for the attainment of the fruitive result of pious activity. Okay. So the other of that is of these two most popular methods, the path of devotional service is recommended here as the best because on the path of devotional service does not have to wait for the attainment of fruitive results of pious activities or for the results of knowledge. The two stages of executing devotional service are first, the stage of practicing devotional service with our present senses under the regulations of the recognized scriptures. So this is a sadhana bhakti, using our present senses in our contaminated state. If using the senses in the contaminated state does not connect to the Lord in bhakti, then how come, sinful people come to Krishna consciousness? It does work because bhakti has the ability to manifest on your senses. Okay? So therefore, the two stages and second, attaining sincere attachment for serving the particles. The second is a sincere attachment, which means that you have nishtha and rati. Now let us carry on reading this. So the first stage is called sadhana bhakti, or devotional service of the neophyte, which is rendered under the direction of the pure devotee. Right? And the second stage is called raga bhakti, in which the mature devotee automatically takes on to the various services of the Lord out of sincere attachment. So up to the point that there's nishtha, devotional service is anything but easy up to the point of nishtha. In the beginning, everyone is faltering. Everyone is, mismanaging devotional life. Everyone is having problems. In the beginning, it's kind of trying to discipline ourselves in the age of Kali. It's easy for some exceptional people, but generally, even the process is easy. It is not that easy because the spontaneous attraction to the Lord is not achieved yet. So you're really having to work. Wake up early in the morning, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulatory principles. You keep doing these things. But even if you have to strive 25 years to do this, come to a platform where we reach the platform of steadiness, you have to think that these 25 years or 15 years is nothing compared to many lifetimes where you have suffered. So we put the effort. So to be honest with you, I'm not the one of those who feel that devotional service is easy. It is easy up to the point where we reach nishtha. Before that, Forget about easiness. And you all know what I'm saying. All know what I'm saying. But once you reach the nishtha, we have a natural attraction for the Lord. It will become like, it won't be like you're going uphill with a bicycle. It will be like you're going downhill with a bicycle. Then it's fun. Right? And you're tired and you've been riding bicycle for 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, and then you get a hill. But on the other side, it's nice. Huh? So on the other side, yeah, okay. You don't want to get off the bike on the other side, will you? Who is a fool who will get off the bike and carry the bike on his shoulder on the other side?
No.
Not me.
So
yeah, so let's be honest and practical here. Let's not be in the illusion, but please let's try to get up the hill. We are getting up the hill here. And then on the other side is Raga Bhakti, on which the mature devotee automatically takes to the various services of the Lord out of sincere attachment. Right? If you are in love, with someone, you make all kinds of arrangements to go and see. You will cheat, lie, get money, get the transport, lie to your boss, do this, do that to go and meet him or her, right? And it's done out of deep attraction. So similarly, Raga Bhakti is done out of deep attachment for the Lord or for the service of the Lord. So the great sage Maitreya now gives the final answer to all the questions of Vidura, which is devotional service to the Lord is the ultimate means to mitigate all the miserable conditions of material existence. Please again and again refer to the verse 176. Anurtha pashamam shakshat bhakti yogam adokshache lokasya janato vidwang chakre sattata samhitam. This misery is superfluous. So once we practice devotional service, we will rejoice in engaging our senses in the service of the Supreme Lord. So the path, the sage Maitreya now to Vidura, we read that. The path of knowledge or that of mystic gymnastics may be adopted as a means for the purpose. But unless mixed with bhakti or devotional service, you are unable to award the desired results. So you can take the path of jnana, but unless there is some bhakti, even the path of jnana will not be successful. Someone takes the path of yoga. Without bhakti, it won't be successful. Someone can take the path of karma, yoga, but without the path of bhakti, it will not be successful. So by practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti. By practicing sadhana bhakti, one may gradually rise to the point of raga bhakti. And by performing raga bhakti in living devotion, transcendental service, one can even control the supreme powerful Lord. So this is the last point explanation here. So Vidura, at this point, we start with text 15. Vidura shared his heartfelt realization with Maitreya, which we can discuss next time. And so text 15 to 22 is Vidura shared his heartfelt realizations with Maitreya. So Vidura talks about his realization on this to Maitreya. So let me do this one verse, so we'll set up this conversation, and then or a couple of verses, and then you can stop here. So Vidura Uvacha, he says, Sanchinam samsayo mahayam tava suttasino vibho Ubhayatrapi bhagavan mano me sampradavati. Vidura said, O powerful sage, my Lord, all my doubts about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities are now been removed by your convincing words. So now he understands the Jiva and the Ishvara and their relationship thereof, and their relationship of the Jiva with the material nature due to misidentification, and the condition of the lives of the Jivas in this material nature, and how it can all be ended by the process of devotional service. He understands that. So now he said, my mind is now perfectly entering into them, into understanding these beautiful words of spiritual master. So the science of Krishna, or the science of God and the living entities, is so subtle that even a personality like Vidura has to consult persons like the sage Maitreya. So truly, factually, if you look at it here, this subject matter that we've been discussing is not so easy to understand, because we see that Vidura has approached his spiritual master. Even such a learned person like Vidura is having to consult Maitreya. So the doubts about eternal relationship of the Lord and the living entity are created by mental speculators in different ways. But the conclusive fact is that the relationship of God and the living entity is one of the predominate and the predominated. So mental speculators give all kinds of explanations, but we have to understand that the living entity is subordinate and the Supreme Lord is superior. The Lord is the eternal predominator and the living entities are predominated. Real knowledge of this relationship means reviving the lost consciousness to this standard, and the process of such revival is devotional service to the Lord. By clearly understanding from authorities like Maitreya, one can become situated in real knowledge, and the disturbed mind can thus be fixed on the progressive path of devotional service. Understanding ourselves, Jiva, such an important thing, and our relationship with the Ishvara and our relationship with material nature, which is just born out of misidentification. So knowledge clears the misidentification. Yes.
Please, my question now is, Vidura, who has been such an exalted devotee from the very beginning, the question is, really, does he never know all these things now that he's inquiring from Maitreya, or is just making these inquiries out of mere formalities for living entities like us?
Well, I think also, even if you know certain things, hearing them over and over again is very important. So like he said, now I understand this and I can enter into these reflections. So like more or less what he's saying here is what we've understood in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2. If you really go through the verses 11 on to the verse 30 of chapter 2, right? The soul is amazing, the soul is not changing, everything is there. And, of course, misidentification in material energy is also explained in Hanyate Hanyamani Sarire, doesn't cause death, so it is there. But hearing it additionally here just increases our. So when we hear something from different perspective, it's important. And Maitreya is particularly coming from the platform of Jnana. is very knowledgeable. Just like the same thing you can hear in a devotional manner, but same thing you can hear from a jnana level, from a jnani devotee, from a jnani person, from a person who is more knowledgeable. Then it makes more sense, right? But the same thing you can understand simply also from someone who is very devotional, but may not be very apt to explain it. So by the process of jnana, which is we using knowledge to study Srimad Bhagavatam, as much as it's as much as it is a devotional activity, Bhagat Shravan. But the idea of it being a devotional activity is not bereft of the angle of knowledge, which we are using this knowledge to understand these things more and more.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole angle of approaching the Srimad Bhagavatam scrutinizingly is to sharpen our intellect, our mind, so we can be fixed in the knowledge of us being Jivas, servant of the Supreme Lord. It requires that amount. Just saying it externally or believing it, at least intellectually, doesn't make us completely free of the bodily conception of life. It requires this process of hearing over and over again. So that's why Vidura is hearing over and over again, because he's gone on to the path of purification. He has left his job, he's left his engagement within the household of Dhritarashtra, and he's on pilgrimage. And his idea on pilgrimage is purification. Purification from entanglement, purification from misidentification, purification from having been engaged in the service of misers. So the process of hearing over and over again is what this entails even for us. Right? Like, for example, you may know already that your identification of the body, misidentification, I don't think yourself is a body. But hearing these here, does it increase your nishtha? Does it increase your determination, or our determination not to be influenced by the bodily conception of life? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
it is a repetitive hearing again and again from different angle.
One thing I can say is that sometimes we are practicing devotional service in a very simple manner. But these are what reveals the intricacies of devotional service, deep knowledge, and this deep knowledge may come from hearing and over again. So you understand the intricacies of the simple things you are doing.
I think devotional service is simple, but our entanglement in material nature is complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by understanding how complicated and convoluted it is, we get out of it. You know, but it helps us to, like, understanding all this. And when Prabhupada concludes where Vidura is saying that to Maitreya, he said, now I understand, I can meditate on this, thank you so much, to Maitreya. Then we can also say, thank you so much to Maitreya and Vidura and Sukadeva Goswami. Thank you, now we can understand, oh my goodness, that's how it is, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Like that. I think the layers and layers of coverings, and the layers and layers of coverings due to layers and layers of sinful activities we have committed, each create a different level of coverings, and the levels of coverings actually changes, gets erased as we hear these different narrations. So it brings, okay, one thing I can conclude, Rasavan Prabhu, is it brings a change in consciousness. Systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam brings a change in consciousness. Slowly, slowly, it changes your consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada says systematic study. So the systematic study of the Srimad Bhagavatam brings a change in systematic change in consciousness, and it makes us more and more fixed. That's why we repeatedly say, please read. It doesn't require much time to read. I was just sitting earlier between 10 and 11, and I just read 1 hour, 20 minutes. I read 3 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can read. So just read for an hour. And I think once you start to get in the mood of reading, Krishna will actually propel us towards higher levels of attainments of purity in devotional service.
Yes, Prabhu, I understand all this as part of the purification process. If one is not sufficiently purified, just as you have read about 3 chapters in 1.5 hours, you give a whole day reading, one can never even cover one chapter. The one is advancedly purified. In fact, things becomes very easy, just as your hand.
But it requires, yes, it requires a practice, because Srila Prabhupada has been very repetitive in his purports. Over and over, you will hear same things. Of course, if you go deeper, you will see some nuances, some differences. So you don't struggle to understand the basics after a while. So that's why the reading goes a little bit faster, Prabhu. But it requires this practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like, I mean, I gave you another example is, as used to reading, devotees are used to reading, but not used to writing. So in the beginning, you know, it was very difficult even for me. Some years back, I was trying to do Bhakti Shastri, and, you know, not having sat at an exam or this or that, 1990, I don't know, 92 or 93 it was difficult. Go back again and writing exams and writing essays, but after a while it becomes easy, right? So after a while it becomes relatively easy. So I think we have to make the effort in the beginning to keep reading. After a year, I would say after a year, if you're systematically reading every day for an hour, after a year, you will go much faster. And if you, similarly, you answer questions, in the beginning, it just looked so heavy. How am I going to write? How am I going to answer? And then after a while, you can start writing. So it's practice makes perfect. So take it from that. Okay? Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So we'll stop here because I think other classes will start, right?
Yes, we will have to stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments?
Krishna.
Last? No?
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Panchakal Vatar Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Picha. Pavane Bhya Vaishnava Namo Namo. Gora Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Nata Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Vaishnava Thakur Ki
Jai.
Grace Advaita Krishna Prabhu Ki Jai.
So on Wednesday, I will not have class because I'm having a small operation in my tooth thing at 10:30 in the morning. So we will have to skip class next Wednesday.
Okay.
We'll come back on Hare Krishna. Thank you. Jai Maharaj. Panchakal Vatar Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Picha.